Yeah, I guess you could start with that.
Well,
With
we're
the war
starting.
or whatever.
We're starting now.
Oh, actually, I thought it was over.
This is my pap. I call him Pappy. I've never called him Grandpa. But Pappy really means, it's like your dad usually, right? Or where does that come from?
That, to be honest, I don't know. I would imagine.
What in your mind, you said, when I have grandkids, I want them to call me Pap? That was just something you made up?
No.
Oh, it wasn't?
No. Pap has been around for a long time. It was either Pap, Papa. Some people called it grandfather, or granddad. It all depends.
Yeah.
But yeah, they asked me, you want the grandchildren to call you Pap? I said, that's fine.
Well, Pap it is. I wanted to talk to you about the political and economic state of the world right now. But more specifically, you got a lot of good insight on our country's history and the predicaments that we're somewhat in right now. So I wanted to start with your background and where you came from, or what you were doing early on, because you're a veteran, and everybody thanks you for your service, but you have a certain thought process about that doesn't really, usually when I thank somebody for their service, they're really appreciative, but there's some reasons why you don't feel that way. So I guess where did it start? You went into the military back in what year was it?
The late 1960s. And at that particular time, the Vietnam War was already on. The programming from the government, and without people realizing we've been programmed, they were indicating that, hey, you got to put down your books and pick up the guns. We have to stop the communist movement in Vietnam. If we do not stop it there, the United States will fall. And all sorts of different propaganda. At the time, I didn't believe it was propaganda. I bought into it. But we have to go back a little ways. We have to go back into Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt vehemently came against the sound advice of no foreign entanglements, which was the concept of the new republic that was birthed in 1776. So Roosevelt wanted a large policy which violated the structure of the republic.
Bigger government, essentially.
Larger government, but interventionist government into overseas. And they used the Spanish-American War as the catalyst to do that. So we can take a look at that Spanish-American War, where actually the United States had picked up the characteristics of a dying empire. And from the Spanish-American War, which was down in Havana, Cuba, with the sinking of the Maine, and then they went into the Philippines and created havoc over there, all in the name of democracy. Democracy is quite to the contrary of our republic. Democracy is mob rule, but a republic is a restraint on government. But fast forwarding to World War I, another war that we should not have been involved in. But there was a lot of shenanigans going on, and therefore the United States, under Woodrow Wilson, who declared that he would not send an American to war, went to war.
Hmm.
And that was the war to end all wars. Now, the last constitutional war we fought was the Second World War, which in reality was a continuation of the First World War. And both wars were destructive.
So
All
you think
wars were
that you think
destructive.
these things stemmed from Roosevelt mainly with the policy that was a catalyst to basically we want to be a dynasty sort of thing?
Yeah, I believe to a certain extent that that's correct.
But you leading up into the time that you went in, were you thinking about these things? You probably weren't.
No. If I had, I would never went. If I had, the old saying, hey, if I only knew back then what I know now. Now, if I had known, as I mentioned, I would never enlisted. And furthermore, I would never have signed up for their selective service. Now, selective service came into effect in 1917, First World War. Now, that would determine the possibility of who would live and who was going to die.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
In other words, you're going to be selected for the military, so you have a pretty good chance of living, or you have a pretty good chance of dying if you're in combat or getting hurt. So then we carried on from World War I until now. What, 30 wars after the war to end all wars? Now,
so you're saying you're saying this has just been it's a new chapter, but it's the same book going on. So now, I mean, essentially, you're very anti-enlistment for people. If somebody were to want to go today, you would be, what would be your, I guess, because you can't tell people what to do, but I guess what are the cons in your mind of having that mindset of wanting to help the country, wanting to go, fight for the country, because that's a really commendable mindset in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. I mean, because people go in, those who aren't drafted, those who volunteer go in believing that we are going to defend our country, for whatever it may take. However, for every action, there are end results. Now, one has to just take a step back and ask the question, what are the end results to all of these wars in the last century, including 26 years into this new century? Has it been the reduction of government? Has it been the elimination of unjust laws? Has it been the elimination of an unjust monetary system which came out in 1913? I'm speaking about the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and there's no reserve. This is the entity to who the United States is indebted. So as I mentioned, you have to look at what are the end results. Less government? If it's less government, we are more free. But it's to the contrary. It has been always more government. James Madison indicated that war is the greatest enemy to liberty. There's only one type of war that's just, and that's in the immediate response to your country being invaded. That's the only just time.
Now you realize, more and more people, I think there's a lot of the younger generation now that is really opposed to any sort of draft, and there's been talks that if there were to ever, if they had a draft, then there would be a lot of uproar and uprising against it right now. There would basically be a lot of civil unrest to oppose that. But what you're saying, there's no right reason for wars. I hear a lot of people, like both sides of the coin say all like that's not a very popular belief, because there's always some reason for us to intervene as the police, like the United States are the police, but there's always some sort of justification to going in. So it's kind of it's kind of like an unpopular thing.
Well, yes, there's always some sort of justification that the government tells us.
Like a moral justification.
That's what they program us to believe. Now, if we go take a look at General Smedley Butler, USMC, he indicated in his book, war is a racket. They are banker wars. I'm not talking about your local bank. We're talking about your Federal Reserve, your International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, etc. And also Butler, in his testimony before the U.S. Senate, entitled "To Hell with War," he realized that war is only a racket, and it's only for the rich. It's the rich man's gain, the little man's fight.
So when you can quote numerous things, but when did this start occurring in your mind? Was it after the war? But first I want to touch on not very specific things, but just the amount of training and hardship. If somebody isn't planning on going into the military, like you endure a lot of hardship, and that does something, I would think, positively to the mind to be able to go through a physical training or stuff like that. I guess my question is, did that, because I can see that it helped in a lot of ways in your life and in many other people's lives that have gone through a physical hardship. How did that really impact you, like going through that training and going through those, just grinded out, I don't know what it was like to go through the training, not the war, but go through the training. What was that like, and how did that help you?
Well, I mean, when you enlist into the military and they put you into their boot camps, they break you down and bring you up with a different mindset, and the training very physical, and it has to be. It's also very mental. It has to be. So that in that light, it's good. But again, it's not for our defense. Now let's take a look at the Vietnam situation. All the hype that we have to stay there, we have to remain there, we have to defeat the enemy. Well, I think it was April 30th, 1975, that the United States pulled out of Vietnam. So, not on a militaristic point, but they had indicated that we had lost that war. Okay? Now, you could go to your clothing stores, or you could go anywhere and you could find products made in Vietnam. And the government allows it to come in to our country. Ostensibly, they forgot about the propaganda that they were feeding us, that, hey, if that falls over there, we're next. But now, United States government, has allowed their manufacturing to come into our country, while our country, well, Ross Perot, he said you're going to hear that sucking sound when the all the factories and that type of thing is going to be removed from our country, and sure enough, it has.
So, but you didn't know that at the time.
No.
That what you just said. Basically, if they fall, was it North? If they fall,
South Vietnam falls.
If South falls, then we are next. Because of what?
Because of communism, but and it was about the whole country of Vietnam.
I see.
But of course, at the time, I didn't know. But if one would take a step back and take a look and say, you're telling me that communism is taking over whatever country, Vietnam or Yugoslavia, you name it. I take a step back and I look. Now, let's take a look at the first plank of the Communist Manifesto. It calls for the abolition of all private property. Now, do you all own property in this country? No. You have to pay a tribute to the government to live on the land that basically you're a tenant upon the government land. Then they tell us,
and it's continuously, everybody knows this, it's getting continuously more and more difficult to own property, but you don't even own it at the end of the day because there's the taxes involved and stuff like that. But we could get into that in a little bit. But okay, you didn't know, I guess, what was the first sort of thing that really got you questioning? Was it when you came back and there was a lot of riots going on, everybody was a lot of anti-war, like it was in the 70s, right? So there was a lot of hippies and stuff like that, but was that what was getting you to like question it? No. Okay. No. What was getting you to question like the purpose of the wars?
Well, what actually got me to question things, I was scratching my head trying to figure out why the country is going into debt. And I knew this vice president of a bank who kind of schooled me on the money, on the monetary. And that woke me up, and I never looked back from that point. So therefore, I'm looking at things, you have an illegal monetary system based upon usury that has enslaved the country. And as a matter of fact, in my learning process on that, in March 9th, I think it was, 1933, the United States officially went into bankruptcy, owing everything to the Federal Reserve. Now, again, looking at all that, and then I'm looking at the fact that, hey, wait a minute, people have been drafted not only in the Vietnam War, but the First World War, then and of course the selective service nonsense that they come up with, which in itself is a violation of freedom. It's either you're free or you're not. There's no in between. The best way I've heard it years ago, a gentleman said, a woman, she is either pregnant with child or she's not. She either is going to have a baby or she's not. She's pregnant or she's not. There's no in between. And he said also, you are either free or you're not. There is no in between. Now, that doesn't mean that there's anarchy. Quite to the contrary. But what we have seen over the decades, over the last 100 years, and looking back and coming forward, the government has violated the concept of liberty. We're going to celebrate the 250th signing of our Declaration of Independence here in June. And ironically, what the document had illustrated was that we are trying to remove ourselves from a system that is absolutely tyrannical. It's an empire. And now here we are, going to celebrate this 250th, and we had attacked a country that did nothing to us. And
it's crazy
because
so where we came from, we broke away, and then we became that thing that we broke away from. That history repeats itself. But this is really, we talk about this all the time, and it's really interesting perspective. I think it would help a lot of people just to hear these ideas, because it takes a lot. You got to go through a lot. You got to see really clearly what's happening behind the scenes, and you've done that. You've done a lot of research in your life, and that's amazing. I guess a little more, not to change subjects completely, but you had to find some sort of something to get you through training, whatever it was, and you're a boxer. You took up boxing. Where did that sort of did you always like boxing and fighting growing up as a kid, or
I liked it. My dad, he used to be on the ships quite a bit, and my mother and I, we would watch the Tuesday night fights and the Friday night fights. So I liked it. But
who was your favorite fighter back then?
Well, I liked Floyd Patterson. I liked Marciano. There was a lot of good ones at all different weight levels, divisions. They were all good, you know. But yeah, I took it up. I was in transit outfit waiting to be deployed. So, but at any rate, going back to.
And then you were waiting to be deployed, and you told me you had a certain amount of fights in a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you won them all.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that like?
Sore. Sore. But yeah.
I guess how were the outcomes when you were fighting? Because you got rocked a little bit, and you said you showed Omi, your mom, pictures.
Yeah.
But then you would always knock.
Yeah.
Them out.
I just got lucky, I guess. But
no, that's crazy, because just to pass the time, and then you find a little something, and yeah, no, that's really really interesting. And then when you got out, what led you to doing over the road work? What led you to trucking? What was that sort of pull?
I always wanted to do it. Ever since I was a young boy, I always wanted to see what was on the other side of that hill, so to speak. And I enjoyed transportation. I enjoyed trailer trucking, and I did it for about 20 years. And in 1986, just to throw this in as a caveat, in 1986, Congress came up with the CDL. Well, okay, that's fine, because when you're out there on the people's roads for profit and for gain, there has to be some sort of rule, there has to be regulations. However, in their CDL bill, they had indicated that they will randomly test people for drugs. Now, I don't do drugs, I don't care to do anything like that. But the point is, you have to have your rules and regulations within the boundaries of the scope of liberty. You cannot accuse people of something. There is no justification for the accusation.
So you're trailer trucking all those years, and then 86 they come out with the CDL, and
it was implemented in 92.
And that's when you got out.
Yeah, I wasn't going to put up with the government nonsense like that, because what has happened, they have in reality made everyone a criminal until you can prove your innocence. Wait a minute, the law says to the contrary. You're innocent until somebody can prove that, hey, you do something wrong. And whatever industry you're in, because it did overflow into the rest of society, into industry. And
just more validation and having to prove yourself for whatever reason. Right. But and you can see, like, there does need to be some sort of safety regulations and vetting and stuff like that, but that just crossed the line in your mind.
Oh yes. Not only in my mind, but in the law's mind. If you take a look at the law itself, you know, I look at John Locke, who was one of the most read by the founders of the Republic, And Locke indicated that any time any person or government tries to get you into their grasp, they have in reality created a state of war against you or collectively on a society.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did a little research on this random drug testing, and again, like I said, I don't bother doing anything of that nature, but I had contacted a professor, and he indicated that they are using that urine sample to collect DNA from each individual. So I kind of tested that, and the outfit I was working for after I got off the road, the outfit I was working for, I said, okay, this time you got me down here to do a sample. I want that sample back to wherever it goes. I want it back, and I'll dispose of it myself. No, we can't do that. So that kind of validates what this Professor Parker was telling me. So anyway, we have drifted so far away from the concept of liberty. We have basically no idea what liberty really is.
Because we have all these, like I guess it's like a frog in the water starts heating up, but you don't really know how hot it is or how hot it's getting if the temperature is just gradually increasing. And since there's so many good things in the United States, we have a lot of great things here, and it's an amazing country to live in, no matter how you look at it, compared to a lot of other places. But that sort of lots of entertainment, lots of distractions. It takes your focus off of where we actually came from in a lot of ways.
Yes, it
does.
does.
And how tight around the neck it's getting for individual ownership and freedom. To your point.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we basically through bread and circus, a lot of it is through that we have lost that jealous eye for freedom, and we have turned freedom in for privileges granted. So when the government can grant you a privilege, it could take that privilege away. But those freedoms that we abnegated, it has turned into a master-slave relationship between the government and the people.
Yeah. Going back to the trucking thing, you mentioned 86. Is that the year that you ran for Congress, or so you got post-war? What was the timeline post-war, and then you talked to that vice president of the bank, and you're thinking about
1983. It was about 12, 13 years after I came back from overseas.
And you were trucking that during that time.
Yes.
So you were that takes a lot of freaking gut, to be in the I guess you're doing your research, or how was it like doing your research? You're over the road trucking, very hard working, trying to provide for your family. At the same time, you wanted to put yourself in a position in government, so you ran, right?
Right. It was the time that you have at home was pretty much limited, because I did run the road, but there was a lot of study that went into it. And when I was home, I had a lot of speaking engagements because I ran as an independent. I ran against these two political gangs. Now, let me say this. The steam engine going down the track requires a fireman to shovel coal into that engine to keep that engine running. Now, every time somebody votes for these two political gangs, they are in reality shoveling coal into this monster going down, this empire going down the track.
Mm.
So what I tried to illustrate was that if you vote for these two political gangs, and don't get me wrong now, over the last century there have been good people that try to, on both sides of the aisle, that try to bring the country back around to a lawful monetary, etc. Ron Paul being one, Jim Traffickett, Charles Lindbergh, the father of the famous aviator, and there's a number of others. So there has been good people. However, both systems, both parties, are still heading down that track to total government. So therefore, anytime anybody shovels a vote in for these two political gangs, are in reality keeping this empire moving down the track.
So you had that mindset going in, running as an independent, and I guess, what was the topic that you were running on back then? It was the monetary, right?
Yes, that was that was the key, to return to a lawful monetary system by abolishing the Federal Reserve. And again, it's not going to happen with these two political gangs. You're not going to vote your way out of this with these two political gangs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I favor the concept of every state generating a movement for secession. Texas has to leave. All states have to leave,
Mm-hmm.
and let the system itself collapse on itself and return to a lawful government.
Mm. So, but back then that wasn't your topic, but still, I guess, paint a picture. You're going to these different speaking engagements. What was the atmosphere like? Because you're basically, and this is a really awesome thing, and it would get a lot of people fired up. A truck driver going in and kind of causing some chaos with these, businessmen. It's blue collar versus white collar sort of thing, and you're going in there. What was your mindset, and what was the environment like?
Well, my mindset was on freedom. I'm focused on freedom. I want freedom to ring once again throughout the land. I want it to ring throughout Texas.
And you're very you can mean mug some people, so you're a very serious guy, which is really, really, really great. What were the other people around you like? Were they kind of like jolly? Because you look at these guys, and a lot of both sides of the aisle, it seems like they're just really super friendly and just wanting to get your vote, and just really good salesmen, stuff like that. But what was your experience with them?
Well, I think what you just said, they're good salesmen, and they are. They're good salesmen, and there's no meat to what they of returning back to a constitution. I don't even want to say a constitutional republic, but I'll get into that in a minute. But
so I guess
a lot of people, where I went to speak, they heard what I had to say up on the podium with the other candidates, and it came to the point that a lot of people liked what I said. At one particular speaking event, I was interrupted 3 times by businessmen with applause for what I had to say. But
where was that?
That was at a country club, but
golf
or a
club.
golf
Okay.
club. But
Okay.
anyway, the point is, if we all start taking a closer look and start getting a jealous eye for liberty again, let me say this: there's 9 phases on the eternal clock of time. It starts out. Well, you can start out anywhere, but I'm going to start out right now with bondage, which is total government, which we are in and is going to continue to grow. So you have total government, then you have what they call spiritual faith. I would like to call it Christian spiritual faith. That's where you start to develop something inside of you, acknowledging that, hey, there is a creator. The creator made man in his image. That means it's got to be free. Then you go to courage. Then from courage it goes to liberty. Then from liberty it goes to abundance, because if free people have the ability of all types of manufacturing, I mean, you name it. We live in a very good country in that aspect. But from abundance, it goes to selfishness. People become very selfish. And then from selfishness, it goes to apathy, then to complacency, then it goes to dependency. And once the people become dependent upon the government, that government has then developed a more tighter control over the people. And then the process starts again.
So those were 9 phases. Basically, you can see different stages of how the country is kind of shaping in itself too. I guess what stage would you say we're at right now, if you had to say?
Both dependency and total government.
That far down?
Oh yeah, we're as I mentioned, there is no voting your way out of this with these two gangs. The only vote that should be cast in every state should be that little box, voting box, where you call it secession. And let's get rid of it. It's lawful. It's outlined in our Declaration of Independence, what you celebrate every 4th of July. And that would bring about a peaceful resolution, because we have to understand it has been always governments that rebelled against the concept of liberty. Always. Because, compared to time, and we're looking at the whole of history, compared to time, freedom has always been short-lived. And it's because of many different factors. And many different factors have enslaved the people on that 9 phases of time. And one of the enslavements, you could see it right away because it's happening, is when the military takes over a country. You could see that. The next takeover, you can't really see it that good, but then you start figuring it out, and it's through a religious movement. And then the most deadliest phase of takeover that's not recognizable immediately, but eventually has become recognizable, and that's your monetary. It's slick. They incorporate all different rules and regulations through the use of the monetary, because once you put a unlawful monetary in that's based upon usury, because every dollar put into circulation is an IOU. Who do we owe? The Federal Reserve. Of course, it goes through the Treasury and all that, but simply put, we owe everything to the Federal Reserve. Now, you're looking at, we're spending $1 billion a day right now on this war. Of course, they got a ceasefire right now, but so that's just
craziness.
Compounding.
It is pretty crazy. And I mean, when I wanted to have this conversation just to ask you about life experience. I knew it was going to get pretty political, and there can be. You're very rooted in these concepts, and a lot of people don't have as much conviction on their topics as you do. But I guess if somebody were to listen to you for the first time as a young man, I guess younger guy, like what would be, in simple words, something to really spark an interest into all this? Because a lot of guys, like, we want to make money, we want to live in abundance, we want to have families, we want to just we want to have things for sure, and maybe we're I guess there's a disconnect between what we've as a country been through and what it is now. It just seems like it's very comfortable. But I guess what would you spark somebody to start, I guess, questioning? What would you, I guess, invite them to do to support your overall premise?
Well, first of all, it's not my overall premise. We got to look at the concept of liberty. And also, what you just described about your generation, it applied to all generations. It applied to my generation, my parents' generation, and further back. So everybody wants to basically want to be left alone. That's the bottom line. But I would suggest that everyone take a closer look and ask yourself a question. Are we, as a people, being left alone by the government? And the answer is no. Do you have the control of the fruits of your labor? No, they extract it immediately for the second plank of the Communist Manifesto, the income tax. Do you have property ownership? No, that should spark interest right there. How can somebody put a bond against my house or my property against my will
if it's
to pay
paid
for
off?
Something?
If it's paid off,
Even if it's paid off or it's not paid off, it makes no difference. They still put that lien against your house through the immoral tax on property. So I would just suggest that everybody get a copy of the Declaration of Independence, both the Colonist Declaration and the Declaration of Independence for Texas, which is basically the same, but get a copy of it. And at the supper table, where it's family time, I would suggest to everybody to get this document and let's start reading it. You can read a little at a time. It's a two-part document. The first part, it talks about where freedoms and derived. It talks about what you as a people should do to promote and to protect that freedom. And the second part of it is an outline, this is very important now, is an outline of the atrocities committed by a very tyrannical system. And look at that, the long list of abuses, and see how many times this government has multiplied that by the hundreds. That should be a wake-up call right there. And any time the government wants to draft somebody, that's a violation in itself of freedom. Because you can't, again, it's either you're a free people or you're not. A free people will come to the defense of their country. And I do want to say this. Last year, April 19th, 1775, 249 years back, the shot heard around the world was on Lexington Green up in Massachusetts.
Paul Revere.
Well, Paul, he had that ride indicating that the troops are coming. But what has been left out of the history books, what has been left out of the commentaries, is Lexington Green, where this first fight took place, was on the church grounds of the Lexington Church. And it was the congregation of Jonas Clark, the pastor of that church. That was his people, the Minutemen, on the line, right there. That is something that the Christian church should be proclaiming throughout this year and all the years past and present and into the future, because that's a key element right there.
What, I guess, elaborate on that. So you're saying the war, the initial shot of the Revolutionary War was on the church grounds because they were meeting, they were congregating based on, like they're trying to gain in their consciousness, seek out the divine, and also have that sort of God-given liberty and empowerment there and stand up for that. Is that right?
That's correct, but it took a couple of years prior to that with Pastor Jonas Clark preaching to the congregation that rights come from God, not from government. That's the bottom line. And privacy is one of the key elements to freedom. And the government of England is destroying that. Now, when the troops came to Lexington, the English troops, don't forget we were all English subjects at that time, even though there was many different people from different countries, such as the Scandinavian countries and from over in Ireland, and so forth and so on. But primarily it was English controlled. So it was Jonas Clark that was preaching over the years that somewhere along the line we're going to have to stand up for our liberty. So at any rate, John Hancock and Samuel Adams were there, but they were whisked away by some of Jonas Clark's congregation. So they wouldn't get captured, because those two men very instrumental in the movement for freedom and liberty. Samuel Adams, and of course.
So they were basically, there's a battle going on, and then Samuel
Right before the battle.
Oh,
it's still dark.
They were in coverage.
They were at Pastor Jonas Clark's place, and they
go to hiding because
they went on to a different location. But
that's crazy. Like, you hear about the figures, and they were so respected intellectually. They didn't like George Washington, all the people that you hear about. That's a really interesting thing. I never thought about it. Like, they took those men away and they hid them, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Because they were just so valuable.
Yes, because, I mean, they were the movers and shakers. And James Otis was mover and shaker. Probably one of the most intellectual on the subjects of... and again, he read from John Locke. Then down in the South, in Virginia, you had Patrick Henry and a number of other people, George Mason. I mean, there's a host of many. Luther Martin out of Maryland. But yes, and this has been pushed aside in our history in school. I had, a number of years ago, corresponded to one of the schools in Johnson County indicating that they ought to have the farewell address of George Washington studied each and every year from the 5th grade on up to the 12th grade. And the reply was, we are not allowed. So this is where we stand. So it's up to everybody to start taking a personal interest, develop a jealous eye, and in doing so, we could come together and start looking at an avenue to remove ourselves, and that's through the lawful and peaceful means of secession. And I'm with Freedom Texas, freedomtexas.org. The website's not really that good. I don't know anything about computers, so to say, and but we're trying to update it. And but this is where we're at today, and everybody has to take a look at where they're at in society and why are we in the condition that we're in.
Man, that's a lot of things to grapple with, and you know, you shake up some people with some of those words, and rightfully so. But it's just not something on a lot of people's minds, and you see it in the country and the lack of care that we take for the country now. And yeah, it's just a pretty interesting thing. Not to be all about, you know, doom and it's not doom and gloom, but it's just trying to effect a change where we can live better lives, even though it seems like everybody has great, you know, pretty good lives, but it's a misconception. It's kind of a false reality that we're living in just because of all the distractions, I think. But I guess something that you've seen recently, and to wrap it up, like something you've seen recently or in the recent years that is a positive thing about all this stuff, because everybody can talk negative and say, oh, we're leading down a path of destruction in America, all that. But I think there could be some positive things upcoming for the country. You know, AI is like they're saying that's going to take over things. I think it could be good in some ways too. So I guess any positive things that you've seen in recent years that you haven't, like, you know, in the past decade or a few.
Well, some of the positive is that here and there people are indeed taking a different look at what these two gangs had done to us. Your positive looks will be various such as the Libertarian Party or the Constitutional Party or America First Party. That's a positive. I think at times when the government really does crazy things, such as been going on right now with this unprovoked attack on Iran, I think people are starting to see what's going on with the high prices of gas. So that's a positive because that will generate some thought. Otherwise than that,
any things that you recognize in this generation that's a little different than not your generation, but maybe like people like the millennial generation, or what are the any takeaways from there?
Well, I think each generation, let's just go back into our history. Let's go back to World War I. That generation, you have a people that, by and large, was self-sufficient to a certain extent. You had more of a liberty to be free, but as each passing generation travels down the road of time, you're going to have more rules and regulations, because war brings rules and regulations. And then the following generation, born into it, believes that's normal. And then as you continue on, you have a hodgepodge of so many different rules and regulations, and then you're into this generation or the previous generations believing this is normal and we have to stay the course. But that's not so. And hopefully through various independent parties, independent from these two gangs, what brought us to our current situation, involvement through that, or involvement in Texas independence or whatever state you're in, try to remove yourself from that. I think that is a positive note there.
So that would be your kind of overall, if someone was wanting to do something, it's not about voting for either one of the parties anymore. And a lot of people are seeing that now.
Yeah.
It's more so, how do we get involved in our community and talk about removing ourselves from the overall system, is what you're saying?
Yes, because the system has overtaken the republic, and I go back to Lincoln's War. I believe that was a large part of our demise right there, because he invaded his own country because the people of South Carolina said, hey, no more. As we ascended to this contract, which is a different story and different subject in itself, as we ascended to this contract with the understanding that we could remove ourselves at any particular time, but Lincoln didn't see it like that. Now, Let's go back while Jefferson was president. New England in 1803 wanted to remove itself, and there was no troops going up there. Jefferson said, look, we wish that you would stay, but if you don't want to stay, you have that right to remove yourselves. But over a period of time, the central government has become so large, so abusive. They make it almost impossible to do that, but at the same time, they encourage other countries around the world that secede from the Soviet Union or what, at that particular time, or whatever country it may be, they endorsed, yeah, go ahead and remove yourself. But I think Long Island, New York wanted to remove itself. Vermont, I believe, Vermont or New Hampshire, one of the two, continues in that direction over the last 20 years. But anyhow, it's up to the people if they want to see or not to see. You want to be free, or you want to continue down the road that you have to ask permission from the government in the form of licenses, which is not freedom. It's total control. As I said earlier, compared to time, freedom has always been short-lived. Therefore, to maintain that precious jewel of liberty, a jealous eye must once again return.
Man, thank you for your time.
Well,
this was
thank
pretty.
you for
This was
inviting me.
pretty cool to talk about these things with you, and yeah, I think however many people will watch this, it's really just interesting to question and may disagree a little bit on a few things, but it's still overall good to keep questioning and keep rising in consciousness and being aware and not blind to a lot of things. So I really appreciate your insight and thoughtfulness on it, and until next time.
Thank you.